To sew the jacket, we're going to follow the direction steps that are in the guide sheet in the pattern envelope. So we're going to start by finding the section on the guide sheet that we need to start with. So sewing directions for jacket A, B, C, and D. So the first part of all the jackets, no matter what view you're making, have the same steps. So the first step is to apply interfacing to our pattern pieces. So we have pattern piece 3 and 4, the collar and the front facings that we need to apply interfacing to. We do not have pieces 7 or 9, so we won't be applying interfacing to those. You'll need to apply the interfacing to your collar and to your front facings. We always want to apply the interfacing to the wrong side. If you have a solid piece and you don't have a difference between your right and your wrong side, you can tell the wrong side because that is the side that your markings are on. So look for your markings and place those right side up or wrong side up so that they're facing up to apply the interfacing to the wrong side of your fabric. So then we're going to lay our interfacing down. On top of those, and we're going to apply. For the collar, it doesn't matter which collar piece you apply it to, it's just the one that you apply the interfacing to will become the facing for your collar. We always apply interfacing to our facings rather than to our actual garment pieces, just in case we would have anything that would show through on the interfacing as we iron that on, such as the glue that would show through a little bit and do what we call a strike through, which is where the glue comes onto, shows through onto the right side of the garment. So we're going to iron our interfacing down. And I'm being very careful on mine, very quick to iron that down, not spending a lot of time ironing that because I have a nylon fabric, and if I leave it on there very long, I will melt the fabric. So be very careful when applying your interfacing. To sew the upper front and back together at the shoulder, we're going to E-stitch the shoulder edges of the back between the notch and the triangle. So the E-stitch is going to be a basting stitch. It's going to be done at 5/8 of an inch, and this is going to allow us to ease the back into the shoulder at the front. Then we're going to pin the upper front at the shoulders to the back, and we're going to stitch that at 5/8 of an inch. After we stitch our shoulder seams, we're going to need to finish those seams with a seam finish, and then we will press those seams flat. Then we will stay stitch around the neck, and this is done at 3/8 of an inch, and it keeps the neck curve from stretching when we are sewing the remainder parts of the pattern together to make the jacket. To ease stitch along the shoulder of the jacket back, we're going to run a basting stitch at 1/2 of an inch. So we're going to put the edge of our fabric at the 1/2 inch mark on our sewing machine. We're going to start at our triangle, so that's our X where we marked our triangle, and we're going to stitch across to the dart. So basting stitch, largest stitch length, do not back stitch. And we're going to stitch across to our notch, and we'll pull that out, leaving large stitches, and we'll do that for the other side as well. For the shoulder seams, we're going to lay the jacket front on top of the jacket back with right sides together. And when we lay those down and we match up the notch and the arm seam, it does not match at the neck. So that's where we're going to have to ease in the shoulder. So to do that, we're going to pin the arm side matching the notch. And then we will pin so that the shoulder matches at the neckline as well. And then we will ease the back into the front by pulling on our gathering stitches so that that becomes the same size, and we distribute those gathers evenly across the seam. And then we will pin the remainder of the shoulder seam matching the edges of the fabric. And we'll do the same thing to pin the other shoulder seam. To sew the shoulder seam, we're going to use a 5/8 inch seam allowance, so the edge of our fabric is at the 5/8 inch mark on our sewing machine. We are going to use a regular stitch length, so make sure that you've reset your machine from basting stitch to regular stitch length. We're going to back stitch and then we're going to stitch across the shoulder seam, making sure that we ease the back into the front where we have those very small gathers. Don't get any folds in our fabric. When we get to the other end, we will back stitch. And then we'll repeat the same process sewing across to sew the other shoulder seam. After sewing the shoulder seam, you'll need to apply a seam finish to the edge of the seam allowances. And you need to do that to both of your shoulder seams. To stay stitch the neck edge, we're going to use a regular stitch length, and we're going to stitch 3/8 of an inch from the edge. So we'll line up the edge of the neck at 3/8 of an inch mark on our machine, and we're going to do it between the circles. So we'll start at the marking for our circle, and we will sew at 3/8 of an inch around the neck. When you get to your shoulder seam, depending upon the seam finish you did, your seam allowances should be folded towards the back if they are sewn together, or they should be flat, one pointing towards the front and one to the back if they are sewn separate. When we come around to the front, we'll stop at our circle.